I was I don't know what to say. I was sitting there. I was really focusing on the fight, and I was just shocked. I'm like, what happened?
And she joins me right now. I'm excited to finally get to talk to her. She is serving her last day in quarantine at the time that we're doing this. UFC Octagon Girl, Red Dela Cruz. Red, how you doing?
Woo! I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. You know, we were talking a little bit before we started, and I mean, this is your last day of a 2-week quarantine?
Yes. It's not bad, to be honest. It could be worse. I mean, I have a one-bedroom suite for myself, so yeah, it's not bad at all.
Not the worst setup that you could have during quarantine.
No,
but I'm sure
definitely not the worst. And I have the view of the Harbor Bridge.
Yeah, so it's not a
Bridge.
bad place. It's not a bad place to be. Sydney, Australia, in general, let alone in a suite during quarantine.
Yes.
But it's something you've had to get used to. But first off, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk to you because I feel like you and really your position within the UFC is a really interesting one that I don't think is highlighted enough. So I'm excited to talk to you overall. But you've been living in quarantine essentially all of 2020. You've gotten used to this. So walk us through. How do you get through a 2-week quarantine as many times as you had to do it?
You know what? When you love what you do, you don't really complain much, isn't it? I love what I do. I love working with the UFC, and it's very exciting for me. And I enjoy it, so I don't complain. It could be worse, but I'm happy here.
So how do you kill the time? Like, what's the thing? Is it all Netflix? Are you reading books? Are you studying something? Like, what are you doing to pass the time?
I do a lot of social media. And I was watching Marvel movies. And sometimes I read book every now and then, and talk to my family and sleep.
Right.
I do a little bit of exercise here and there. It's hard to, get yourself motivated when you are in quarantine. It's very quiet, but I love it. I love to have some time for myself.
Yeah, I think that's actually the thing that everybody's really benefited from being in a quarantine in general of 2020 and 2021, getting that time to ourselves and learning new skills or seeing the movies that we never got to see before or catching up with old friends, right?
100%. I totally agree to that. I've never watched this much of Marvel movies in my life than I was in the last few months. I love it though. I enjoy it.
So what's your go-to? What's your favorite Marvel movie so far?
It was Thor, Ragnarok, and it was all the Iron Man movies. I love Iron Man.
Yeah. How could you
What's
not
your favorite
love?
movie?
My favorite movie? Mine?
Mm-hmm.
Mine is Back to the Future. Have you ever seen Back to the Future?
No.
Oh, come on now. We got to put that on the list. Classic. I actually
I'll put that on the list.
Put it on the book. I put on the list. I
I
actually wrote a book that came out last year about the movies, about Back to the Future. I wrote it.
That's
It came out
nice.
#1 on Amazon. You know, little something. But
I'll definitely put that on the list.
You need
Don't
to.
you worry.
You need to. But I'm excited to talk to you because you are a UFC Octagon Girl, one of very few. And you're somebody who we see all the time, us fight fans, we see you all the time at the big shows, but I never get to hear from you. And that's why I was like, you know what, let me reach out. I wonder if she would do an interview because I'm interested by the story. So how did you, let's start from the beginning. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Philippines, so my background is Filipino, full Filipino.
Okay. So all Filipino. Then how'd you end up in Australia?
I came to Australia 5 years ago. I just love adventure. I love new countries, meeting a lot of new people, and I just love it. And Sydney, Australia is one of my top lists to go to, I would say.
Okay, so it was at the top of the list. So you said might as well move there.
Yes.
Okay, I like that. So talk to me. How did this journey in the UFC start? Because the UFC obviously is a global juggernaut at this point, touring all around the world. Most recently had an extended stay at Yaz Island. But how did you get into the UFC originally?
So it started all the way back in Manila 5 years ago. they were looking for the next UFC Octagon Girl in Asia. And my trainer, my fitness trainer, called me up and telling me that, oh, the UFC is looking for the next UFC Octagon Girl. So I'm like, okay, submitted my file online. And then a few days after, I got an email saying that if I wanted to do an audition. So I went to the audition. My God, all the girls were so pretty. There's definitely a lot of competitions there. And so they selected from top 20 to the top 10, from top 10 to top 5, and then from 5 to just me. I'm very lucky, very blessed, and very grateful to be part of the UFC. And I love what I do.
So, okay, so it went from top 20, top 10, top 5, all the way down to you. So when did you feel like, okay, you know what? I actually might get this one. I might be the next one.
You just don't know. You just don't know. It was actually down from selecting through votes. So if you got the most votes, you pretty much get the job. So it just happened that I built up my profile in Philippines, and I have a lot of followers. At that time I've got like 1 million followers. So that's my advantage. So I want to thank as well my fans for always supporting me, and I'm here.
Well, you know, the Filipino people in general, Filipino people are an incredible supportive group. I remember in Vegas, maybe it was 2019, the last time Manny Pacquiao fought there. You would have thought the fight was in the Philippines. That's how many people were there, right? And the
Yes.
section I was in, it was nothing but people from the Philippines. And I remember there was this older man. He must have been 80 years old. I mean, decked out in all his Manny Pacquiao gear. He had buttons, he had pins, he had shirts, he had hats, and he he kept me entertained for the whole fight. It's a very supportive group of people, right?
Yes, we Filipino, that's what I love with my culture. We as Filipinos, we support each other. Like I've got a lot of Filipino fans back in the Philippines, and then I love when I send me messages and commenting on my photos. Oh, Red, we're here to support you all the way from Philippines. It just makes me feel loved. I think I love that as my culture, and yeah, we support each other.
So when you get the gig, let me ask you, were you a fan of the UFC prior? Did you know, and if you weren't, did you know about the sport, or was this like all brand new for you?
No, it wasn't brand new for me. I was actually a local MMA ring girl in the Philippines. So I know UFC even before I got the job. And I just love fighting. I love the intense.
Right. I mean, in the Philippines, like we just talked about with Manny Pacquiao, obviously a big fight culture down there. The Thrilla in Manila, one of the most famous fights of all time, going down in the Philippines. So I'm sure it's a part of the culture. Do you remember like the first UFC fight that you ever saw or ever watched?
Yeah, I remember. I definitely remember. It was in Manila. It was Edgar versus Uriah Faber fight night. It was very nerve-wracking for me because it's the first time that I'm gonna be standing in front of thousands and thousands of people. And Filipino fans are amazing. They're like Vegas. They're so crazy and they're so loud. I remember being shy, but then I was very excited at the time as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, what a debut! That was a great fight, and to be in your home country, to be in the
Yeah.
Philippines, I'm sure that kind of gave you a little extra energy.
Vibe,
Yeah,
energy.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Right, right. To be in the Philippines for your debut, that's pretty awesome.
Oh,
So
so awesome.
when you came in to the UFC, and you're the new UFC Octagon Girl, I'm sure at some point you cross paths with the boss himself, Dana White, once or twice. And Dana, I think, is one of the. I don't actually think that he gets enough credit for the visionary that he is with the sport and how much he's been able to grow it. But what is Dana White like like when you meet him? Like, how is Dana White? Is he what he comes across on TV, like an intense, no BS kind of guy, or is he, something that we don't see on the screen?
I remember meeting Dana in Vegas. I was so shy. I was super shy, but he's a really really cool guy. He's awesome. He's very calm person, and he's always just whenever you see him, he's just always happy. So he's not the type. He's not what you always see on interviews. He's actually very, very, very nice person. Very, very kind.
Yeah, see, that's to me, that's the thing I like to hear because he just seems so intense, and he doesn't seem happy all the time. He seems like he's always, ticked off yelling at somebody. But I assume that he has that other side to him. Is there any advice that he ever gave you, or anything in your conversations that sticks with you to today?
I actually haven't spoken to Dana as much, to be honest. I just see him on the fight. We say hi to each other, and that's it.
Yeah.
He's a busy man. He got a lot of things going on during the fight, and then yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that he's just insanely busy all the time. How was it when you came in? Because I worked for a long time in pro wrestling, right, which is kind of the cousin to MMA. And I remember when you come into the locker room, there's a certain culture and there's certain norms that you have to abide by. When you became the new UFC Octagon Girl, how were the other girls with you? Were they all like, "Hey, welcome to the team," or were there certain things that you had to learn when you first got there? How was it?
No, they were very friendly. They were very awesome. They made me feel very welcome to the company. They, especially Ariane Celeste. Oh my God, I love her. I idolize her. She's the best. Yeah, they were all nice. They're all nice to me, and just very, very nice girls.
So she kind of took you under her wing and showed you the ropes. Would that be what you say?
Yes, yes. Oh, this is the room. This is what we do.
What was the most surprising thing when you first got there? Was it the scope of how big everything was, or was there anything that just stood out to you? Because I know you said you did the local ring girl in the Philippines, but was there anything when you got to the UFC you're like, wow, this is different?
Yes, I get to meet a lot of people, like really famous people. So that's, for me, that's like, wow, this is like different. Like I don't get to see this in my job before as a local ring girl, but yeah, it was seeing famous people, I would say.
Who are some of those names that come to your mind when you're like, oh man, I've gotten to meet so and so, so and so, and so and so? You're laughing. I feel like you already have someone in your head.
I already saw someone in my head. It was The Rock.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Chris Hemsworth's wife.
Okay.
I was nervous. Oh my God.
Yeah, The Rock. He obviously was there for the BMF fight in New York, which you were a part of, and that guy may be the most inspirational human on the planet.
Yes. I love The Rock.
Yeah, he's
who doesn't love The Rock?
I haven't found anybody who will speak negatively about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but even when he came out at the BMF fight, and he brings a whole nother level of energy. So what was it like being around him? Do you feel the electricity that is always discussed when you talk about The Rock?
Yes, I do. I was very nervous, but very excited at the same time. It was my first time meeting him, and definitely the crowd was crazy, especially when he brought up the BMF fight on the fight night. Oh my God, it was just crazy. I will never forget that moment.
I was going to even ask you about that night, because that entire night was a memorable night for the UFC. I mean, BMF title fight, Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal is such a personality. Nate Diaz is such a personality. You have The Rock there. What was it like? What was that energy like in the crowd? Because on camera, I don't think that I've ever watched a UFC fight, aside from a McGregor one, that had that much buildup to it, to where it felt like everybody was watching the BMF fight. What was it like sitting on the side of the octagon, getting to see it happen?
Well, we've got the best seats in the house,
Yeah,
so you get to what do you call this? You get to see all these things and experience these things. Definitely, the crowd is another level. Like The Rock being there, it's got up. Like UFC is already the fans were already, I don't know how they say, but the fans were already crazy enough.
Right.
But being The Rock there, oh my God, it's totally different vibe.
Yeah. I just remember watching that fight, and then I think there was all kinds of people there. There was all kinds of people at the BMF fight, and it was cool to watch. Were you a little bit let down by how the fight ended, because they ended on that doctor stoppage? Was that did that let the air out of the building, or was it still cool? that it was the BMF fight?
I think no, it didn't let me down. I think they're both baddest motherfuckers. If I'm gonna be completely honest with you.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. They're 100%.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
hopefully we get to see the rematch soon. Hopefully we get to see the rematch soon.
That would be a good one.
Oh yeah. But speaking of rematches, I mean, you're fresh off of Yaz Island for, I mean, one of the most anticipated the most anticipated fight so far, 2021, which was McGregor and Poirier 2. We were all excited for it, given to what Conor was able to do the first time around. You talk about somebody who brings an energy. I don't know if anybody brings an energy like Conor McGregor when he walks into a building. But seeing him take his first loss via KO, really, to Dustin Poirier, what was going through your mind when you were, because like you said, you had the best seats in the house, right? Best seats in the house. What was it like to see McGregor kind of have a little bit of a fall from grace?
I was I don't know what to say. I was sitting there. I was really focusing on the fight, and I was just shocked. I'm like, on the first round he was doing really well, and then on the second round I was just like, what happened? I looked at it with my colleague Camila. I'm like, what happened? It was crazy. The fans were crazy.
Yeah, and that was another thing I wanted to ask you, because those were the first fights since, I mean, early 2020 to have even a small group of fans there, because I think there was like 3,000 fans or something around there. Did they bring, I don't know, because the UFC's been fun to watch regardless, even without the crowd. It's been still fun to watch. I mean, at some points for those early fights, it was almost more interesting to watch without the crowd. But to have the fans back in there, do you think that changed the way that guys were fighting at all? Because a lot of them have been used to these no crowd fights, and then all of a sudden you have a few fans in there. Do you think that they fought different at all?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been to Conor McGregor fight last year in January with Cowboy, and still the same energy. I don't think it affected them that much. It feels good to have the fans back there. The energy was just amazing.
So that's a good point to bring up. When 2020 happened, I mean, we started the year off last year, Conor McGregor, Cowboy Cerrone, under a minute knockout with the shoulder thrust. I mean, everyone was going crazy. Conor's back. Oh, he's going to be the world champion again. We love it. We love McGregor. And then the world shut down, right? You and I were speaking a little bit before, and I said, like, the last fight that I attended, or the last event I attended, was a UFC fight in Houston. When everything went down and all the fights were postponed, we were going to see Khabib and Tony at that time. All the fights got postponed and pushed back. What was going on in your mind? Were you thinking, oh, I mean, is the UFC going to go away? Are we going to have fights at all this year? I mean, what were you thinking when everything kind of shut down initially?
I remember my first fight was the Auckland UFC Auckland New Zealand fight. That was the last time I remember having the audience, and then of course I was worried because of the virus. This is a kind of worldwide thing, and we're not allowed to leave our house. And here comes Dana came out of with the idea of Fight Island, and I was very grateful that I was part of it. I was still able to work.
Yeah, when we started first hearing these whispers of a Fight Island, it sounded like, what is he talking about? Dana White bought an island?
It sounded unreal, right? Like,
yeah. When you started, let me ask you then. When you started hearing like Fight Island, were you asking around? Were you texting people and saying, "Is this a real thing, or is this something that he's just talking about? What is Fight Island?"
Yeah, everybody was just talking about it, like, well, what is Fight Island? What are we gonna do it in Fight Island? Is this even real? And then I was very grateful to be part of that, and it's a very unique experience as well. Like, like living in a bubble with just us UFC and fighters, and it's just very unique experience for me. I love it.
So when you got to Fight Island for the first fight over there at Yaz Island, Abu Dhabi, of course, what was like the protocol like? What did you have to do? Because I remember hearing Dana White talk about there was like hundreds of tests that were going on during that entire time. Did you have to come in and do something similar to you're doing right now, do a quarantine and do the whole process like that?
So before you get into Fight Island, you gotta get tested before you board the flight. You gotta have a negative test, and then when you got into Fight Island, they'll test you on a day one, and you have to quarantine for 48 hours. And then before the fight, we have to get tested again. So there's like a lot of testing that we need to do before the fight. We just making very sure that everybody's safe, and yeah.
Yeah, because it just seemed like I remember seeing pictures of it, and it just seems like this whole production just to get into the facility, right? Just to get into
Yes.
it. I mean, there's doctors and nurses and
Everyone
tests.
was there. Everyone's there.
Right.
It felt like kind of a future for me, because like seeing these nurses like in a blue suit with their what do you call this, face shield on and a mask. It's like I kind of feel like I'm in the future.
Yeah, it felt like
And
a
there was
weird
there was
future.
a lot of them.
Yeah, yeah, I can only imagine what that was like to be there. And how many times when you're on Fight Island do you have to be tested? Is it just the one time before you leave and then when you get there, or how many times do you have to be tested?
So we've got fight there every week, so we gotta get tested twice a week.
And
There's
then,
a lot of testing.
ugh, but I mean, I've had to, unfortunately take the test several times, and it's not the most fun experience in the world.
No.
Do they? I mean, for you all, do they do the one that where they don't have to go all the way up to your brain? Do they?
So in Australia, you don't get to choose. They gotta do both. But in Fight Island, you get to choose whether you want the nose or you want the mouth. I always choose the mouth. It's just the easiest. When you put it onto your nose, it's just tickling your brain.
Oh,
And I've done it while in quarantine. I've done it 3 times in here.
Oh God. So
It's,
you've probably had
I'm kind of like used to it.
you've probably had several
So
dozen
the nurses,
tests.
yes.
Yeah.
The nurses will just come in and they'll do, what they usually does, and I'm just like, let's do it.
Let's just get it over with, so I don't have to worry about it.
Let's just get there. I've done it so many times, so like, yeah.
So, talking about being in Australia, I remember there was this odd story that came up a couple years ago. In Australia, there was talk about the UFC Octagon Girls were no longer going to be allowed to be a part of the festivities for the UFC events in Australia. And I remember reading this, and we talked about it on the air at the time, and it made no sense to me. I'm sure that it was a topic of conversation for you. One, being a resident of Australia, Sydney, and two, being a UFC Octagon Girl. What do you remember about that and the fallout from it?
Of course, it's not good. Like, I love working for the UFC and I love what I do. And I was very thankful that Dana was able to back us up on this. So yeah, I don't want to really talk about it that much, because it's just, it's past.
Yeah,
But we're still here working.
yeah. No, I mean, it was great. It was great. I just remember hearing that and thinking, what a crazy what a crazy thing to even happen.
I know, right? Like, no one should be telling what you do in life. You know what I mean?
No,
Like, people have freedom to do whatever they want.
yeah.
So-
Well, I'm glad that you have that stance on it. I'm glad that Dana White backed you up, because again, it was just such an odd thing to hear about. But
Yeah, I remember myself being on a front cover of a newspaper, and then one of my friend I actually didn't know about it, and one of my friend was sending me a photo. I'm like, Red, we saw you on a newspaper. I'm like, what do you mean? What is it all about? And then I saw the newspaper. I'm like, really? Oh, come on. Then
yeah. But again, it kind of came and went. It kind of came and went a little bit, right? I mean, we heard about it, and then it was out the door. The next time, next thing you knew, it was out the door. So what do you say, in your opinion? Because you've been at cage side. Because honestly, these last 5 years, 6 years have been maybe some of the best fights in UFC history have gone down in this period of time, and you've gotten, like you said, to be at the best seat of the house for several of these major fights. In your opinion, since you've been there, what are the couple of fights that come to your mind as like the best fights that you've gotten to see sitting cage side?
It was definitely the Khabib one, and it was very emotional, and I
The
felt
Khabib and
him.
Connor,
No,
or
the
no,
the
the Khabib
Khabib
and
one.
Justin.
This is the very recent one.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, that one. It was very emotional fight for him, and just the very recent one as well, Conor McGregor and Poirier.
Yeah, yeah. Those two were emotional for different reasons, right? Khabib,
Yes.
after his the tragic passing of his father,
Hmm.
coming back and doing that fight and being so dominant in his victory against
Hmm.
Justin Gaethje, and then Conor, who he thought was back, it wasn't his time. It wasn't his time. It wasn't Conor McGregor's time. But as a UFC ring card girl, UFC Octagon girl, excuse me, you've been that now for several years. But what is your ultimate goal? Do you want to stick with the UFC for as long as you can, or are there other things that are interesting you that you want to try at the same time?
At the moment, I'm working on my website, which is about 95% finished. And I'm just working on my own brand. And of course, this is not something that you can do forever, but I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna enjoy it now. And of course, I do have a future plans for myself. I wanna have my own business and to be able to help other people as well.
Oh, I mean, those are great goals, obviously.
Mhm.
In regards to the website, what is the website going to be as far as when people go to it? What can they see on there?
Just watch out.
Oh, okay. She's gonna give us a little tease. She's gonna give us a little tease.
Yes, of
Okay.
course. Can't tell you everything of it.
Yeah, right. And then expanding your brand, like, what do you want to get into? Do you want to get into fashion? Do you want to get into more, health and beauty, fitness? What do you mean when you say expand the brand?
Like working on my own brand. So
Mhm.
means like I actually just enrolled on an acting workshop. So I'm gonna do acting once a week, twice a week here in Sydney. I enrolled with one of the biggest acting workshop where I think Chris Hemsworth was there doing the schooling. So yeah, I'm very excited for that. Maybe something that I can maybe in the future, you don't know, I'll be an actress or something, but also to boost my confidence. Sometimes I still get nervous, believe me or not. I get nervous with a lot of people, and maybe this will help me.
Oh, I'm sure, but because it's funny to hear because I think a lot of people who are in any kind of entertainment business, even me, when I'm around smaller groups of people, I'm way more nervous than if I'm in front of 20,000, right? 20,000, you feel at home. Five, I get all nervous and I'm like a turtle in a shell, right?
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm the opposite way. Sometimes I would get really nervous and I don't know what to do, but I take my time to, you know what am I nervous for? Just take a deep breath, drink some water, and get on with it.
Oh, yeah. No, that's good
You can
advice. And
only improve from here.
right, right, yeah, yeah, and
Right.
doing that, telling yourself that it's not going to be as bad as you think it is, always helps. So, at regards, we've touched on what you want to do in the future as far as acting and things like that. And speaking of acting, this is something we've already talked about a little bit. We talked about your Marvel movies that you've been watching, but I always like to know what are people's favorite films of all time. Like, what are your go-to movies? If this is Red De La Cruz, it's a random night. We're just hanging out in quarantine or with your friend eating oxtail stew or whatever it is that you're doing. What what movie are you putting on? Like, what's your suggestion? What are your couple of your suggestions?
I love Wonder Woman, and I love history. I know it's not a movie, but I just love history,
Mhm.
and I love sci-fi movies. I love universe. I love everything about the sun, the moon, and the life out there. Just
So,
love it.
do you think there's life out there? That's what. Do you
A
think that
hundred
there?
percent.
And I do too.
I do feel that there's a life out there. I think a couple of years ago, there was a scientist that found another similar to Earth, but it's just billions and billions years light away. So I'm like, it's sometimes I get really, what do you call this? I get goosebumps by just thinking of it. Like, imagine that we're not the only human beings in this universe. There's a lot of universe out there.
I know.
It's
I
very
think about that.
interesting.
I think about it all the time.
It's just gonna make you crazy. So sometimes I just don't think about it, but I love sci-fi. I love watching Star Trek. I think it can happen in maybe in the future, technologies is just only improve and improve.
If you like sci-fi and you like movies and the future and all these things, how have you not seen Back to the Future? Oh my gosh. Okay, we got to change that ASAP. We got to change it ASAP. I promise you that you'll love it. But when it's all said and done in your career, either as an Octagon Girl or we're thinking 20, 30, 40 years in the future from now. We're talking about the future, right? We're thinking the future. What do you want to be remembered for most?
You mean like in far back future?
Yeah. Just when your career's over, you're sitting down, you're retired in Sydney, Australia again, get a nice bowl of that oxtail stew, and you're eating it. When the name Red Dela Cruz comes up, what do you want people to remember and think about?
I don't know. It's hard to think that far yet.
Right, because you still have so much more to do.
Think that far. Yeah, there's still a lot to do. I'm still very young, and you just don't know. You just don't know. I'm not that far ahead yet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
There's still a lot going on. You just don't know, maybe.
There's still tons always going on, and it seems that your star power is only getting bigger, and your talents are only getting broader. And I saw that you recently also launched a Cameo page. Is that right?
Yes.
So how can people get involved with the Cameo?
They just gotta download the app and put a request on me, and I'll just do it for them. I actually do it for my fans.
Yeah, do it for the fans. Just for the fans.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, where can people find you, follow you, get in contact with you if they want to reach out or learn more about Red Dela Cruz?
So right now, as what I said to you before, I'm still working on my website, which is about 95% there. I'm gonna be doing a lot of social media posts, videos, and more UFC, I would say.
More UFC, I would say. And you can follow her on all those social sites at Red Dela Cruz, of course. Red, this has been a pleasure. I've enjoyed this. Have you had a good time?
Of course.
Of course.
I had a good time. Okay. Thank you for having me.
This is the great Red Dela Cruz. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What's up, this Booker T, two-time Hall of Famer. I know you're checking out the shine, checking out the gloss. I want to thank you guys for checking out Row on YouTube. Hey, don't forget to click and subscribe to check out all the latest content right here each and every week. Now, can you dig that, sucker?